Hey, folks, I wanted to take a moment to welcome Dixon's Fixins to the Talking About Food family. As a private chef, I know how much time you spend in grocery stores, and we've all heard the saying, time is money. That's why at Dixon's Fixins, they deliver all your beef, chicken, pork, and seafood needs at prices that fit the average family's budget. This family-owned business is committed to providing the best USDA choice and prime steak, open-range farms chicken, butcher-certified pork, and wild-caught seafood. All their products are all natural, hormone-free, with no byproducts or steroids. They treat every family they serve as if it were their own. So sit back, relax, and let Dixon's Fixins bring the best quality food right to your door, garage, or place of business, all while cutting your grocery bills in half. Check them out today at DixonsFixins.com. That's Dixon's Fixins, bringing quality food into your home and bringing your family back to the table. Hello, Grand Strand. This is Richard Florczak, the private chef to the stars, and welcome back to Talking About Food. It's the only food commentary show on the Grand Strand. We talk about restaurants, food trucks, festivals, and farmers markets. We interview local chefs and local restaurant owners, and from time to time, I interview some of my celebrity friends. And whether celebrity or not, the topic will always be food, because nothing brings people together like great food. You may have heard Mel Gibson on a few shows back, and like I promised, we talked food. We also did the same thing with blues great Kenny Wayne Shepherd and Academy Award winner and music giant, the great Paul Williams. Speaking of great food, we have in studio today Chef Adam Kirby, co-owner of Bistro 217 and the Rustic Table. Chef Adam Kirby, welcome to Talking About Food.
Thanks for having me.
Oh, it's an absolute honor to have you in the studio. But I've got to tell both you and the listeners this funny story that happened over the time you and I have been communicating. I'm a very impatient person. When I don't get a return text in a sufficient amount of time, my skin starts to crawl, right? And after about an hour, I send them the infamous question mark. And my wife gets on me all the time. She'll say, "You don't do that. They're busy or whatever." And I'm like, I'm just so impatient. So last week, Chef Adam and I talked on the phone at length, and we agreed to do this interview today. And he asked me, would I kindly remind him on Wednesday, the day before, through a text. And I thought, yeah, the least I can do. He's doing me this great favor. So yesterday, I sent him a reminder text, and the text I got back started off with an expletive. and then he said, I can do 1 o'clock. I said, oh, I'm thinking to myself, that's perfect. So I set up a text to Adam saying, thank you so much. 1 o'clock will just work perfectly fine, and I forgot to send it to him. And at 9 o'clock this morning, I get a text from Adam with 5 question marks. So I thought, I just burst out laughing. I thought it was the funniest thing, and I thought, in addition to food, we've got a lot in common. I love your comment on your website, and I've heard you say it a number of times, and it's ironic because your mom is sitting with us in the studio today. I'm so glad to have her. You said you learned from 2 great Southern chefs, your mother and your grandmother.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, tell the listeners a little bit about that. How did that work in the home?
Well, what I figured out was at a very early age was the difference between good food and bad food.
Yeah.
So I grew up eating really good food.
Yeah.
So when you go out somewhere and you have bad food, you're like, wow, that's not mom's cooking.
Right.
And so I grew up with homemade jellies and mayos, and like you go into my mother's house, there's a plate of summer tomatoes sitting in there with homemade mayonnaise on them.
Beautiful.
And my grandmother, growing up, she's always, when we would wake up to a feast.
Yeah.
Breakfast, buttermilk muffins, eggs,
Right.
sausage, bacon, everything. And then she would be in there prepping for supper.
Of course, yeah. Now, did she like grab you by the ear and bring you into the kitchen and say you have to learn this, or did you naturally gravitate towards that?
Yeah, I think, I always kind of I liked cooking. And watching them cook was a big inspiration for me, and having all those good foods, you just sort of learn as you're going. I mean, I think the first thing I ever learned to make was scrambled eggs.
Yeah.
And like tuna fish salad and things like that. Real simple stuff. And, it's kind of like they say, if you learn how to cook an egg, every way you can cook an egg, you pretty much know all the cooking methods.
Yeah, that's interesting.
And
now, do you have siblings?
I do have an older brother.
Is he a good cook?
He cooks pretty good.
Yeah.
Yeah. He cooks pretty good.
Is he in the food business?
No, he's not. He's more of a computer guy. And, and he's done all kinds of stuff.
Yeah. You've worked in Hawaii, San Francisco, Atlanta, Portland. Why did you end up here in the Grand Strand?
So we grew up coming down here to the beach. My father retired down here, and I was in Atlanta working in a lot of places. I had already got my culinary degree and gone out to California and Hawaii and all those places you were saying, in Portland, and did a lot of like Pacific Rim style cooking and a lot of West Coast cooking, and I'm trained French, raised Southern.
There's similarities, aren't there?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's really amazing to me. I mean, I got here, I've studied quite a bit and was able, mostly because of the celebrities I worked for, I was able to travel the world. And I get here to the South in the Grand Strand, and all of a sudden I'm looking around and I said, I got this new style of food to figure out here.
Yeah.
Yeah, there are some. Do you fish?
I fish like crazy.
Is that right? Do you have a boat?
I do.
Yeah.
I got a creek boat, which we go out in the creek for your inshore, your flounder, trout, redfish, getting a slam.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I do stone crabbing with Peter, which I know you've interviewed.
Oh, Peter Gervais is just a great guy.
Which is fun, crabbing. And then, just everything depends on the wind here. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's where you're going fishing, whether you're going offshore, you're fishing the jetties, or fishing in the bay, or fishing in the creek. It's just all depends on the wind.
So you're going to give up some of your secret spots to me after the show?
I got plenty of them.
That's so great. What I love about your restaurant and your style of cooking, and just by pure coincidence, when my wife and I came here to check out Murrells Inlet for the first time from Los Angeles, we dined in your restaurant. It was the first restaurant that I'd ever eaten here. Cool. And I didn't know anything about you at the time. And I looked at the menu, I looked at the dishes, and especially the way your plate presentation is. And I've got this sort of line that I use with some chefs, you being one of them, is that you know how to walk. I'm talking about plate presentation, first of all. I mean, your dishes are absolutely phenomenal taste-wise, but you walk that thin line, which I believe is hard to do. It's a line between casual and pompous. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah.
I'll never forget a chef instructor said to me in school one time regarding plate presentation, the real talent isn't just what you put on the plate, but what you leave off.
Right.
And sometimes I'll get into a restaurant and the dinner arrives and I think to myself, what were they thinking? It's just so over garnished and stuff. Now, there's something like, this is really interesting to me. I hope it is to the listeners. Does something like that, the composition of the plate, come easy to you? Do you just immediately know, like the flavor profiles and how to position things on the plate?
Yeah, like a typical day. Like everything on my menus is on the menu. They're very hard to change. I have 4 things I can change on the menu without having a riot.
Right.
So we do an enormous amount of specials every day. I mean, Bistro, we'll do at least 3 specials for lunch, and then we'll do another 5, 6 specials for dinner. And it's not like we're trying to use something up. We're calling and just saying, hey, what do you got?
Right.
And, the proteins don't change so much. Some of the fish changes throughout the year, but, a lot of your produce is what really changes seasonally. So, we'll call the fish guy like, hey, what'd you guys catch? I'll call my farmers and say, what do you guys got in there that's cool? Because, they love me because they can order whatever they want to. And if they got something cool, whether it's a Jerusalem artichoke or salsify or something weird, I'm all over it.
Yeah, because you're creative.
Yeah, and like I think everything has a proper cooking method to it, and if you cook everything properly, like prepping it, like whether you're blanching your vegetables or whatever type of muscle of whatever animal is, like, your fish, you got two kinds of fish. You got the ones that live on the bottom of the ocean. You got the ones that live on the top. The ones that live on the top are always swimming, chasing their food, very lean meat. The ones on the bottom are just opportunistic eaters waiting for something to come in front of them. Then bam, what I mean? So they're a little fattier, a little easier to fish. The ones on top, you got to cook them fast, eat them fast. Don't overcook them, right? You get a little more leeway with the bottom fish. So same thing with all your land animals. Same thing. Each muscle, has a method that's the best suited for it.
For that,
and you have a couple options there, of course. Yeah. But
I've fished all my life, and obviously I'm a chef. I've never thought about that as that's really interesting. When it comes to the actual composition of the plate, where the protein's going to go, like I said earlier, your plates are beautiful. How do you devise that? The actual presentation.
Well, we have a number of plates, right? And I have a couple colored plates, but not many. I'm all about like white and let the food sort of talk for itself.
Yeah,
right.
That's a great point.
We sort of work from the center of the plate out. The most important thing is you make the food taste good, right? And I've always believed making it look good has been pretty easy. It's just something that's sort of been doing it for so long.
That comes naturally.
It's just something you do. And you're right about the garnish. Don't over garnish things. I mean, if you're not going to eat the thing, why don't put it on there?
I know your menu changes. Is it seasonally or?
Quarterly, and probably a little more than that actually. Because if I get something on there, I'm not happy with, you're gonna change it out.
Yeah. And the other thing too is I love about your restaurant is how you approach the specials, that they really are specials. I can't stand when I go into a restaurant and have one of their specials and go back 6 months later, it's still on there. Then it's not a special. But I was pleasantly and happily surprised. I wouldn't say pleasantly surprised. I was happy to see that there was only one dish on there right now with a balsamic glaze.
Right.
I put out a post the other day on Facebook, and I wish that I hadn't, because that's not what this show is all about. But I asked this question: is it just me, or have the restaurant supply places been giving away balsamic glaze? And then somebody sent me a picture of a plate somewhere, and it was dizzying. There was so much balsamic glaze on it. What kind of range do you use at home?
It is a KitchenAid. Right, KitchenAid.
They're good.
Yeah. Gas.
Yeah.
I like them. It's hot.
Yeah. Do you cook much at home?
I do cook.
Yeah.
Pretty good at home.
Yeah. Wow.
I mean, I've got a farm too. I don't know if you knew that.
No, I didn't know that.
I grow a good bit of my vegetables.
Oh, that's right. Peter Drace was saying that you grow a lot of your vegetables. Yeah. That's right.
And so, when we go out and go fishing, and I grab some stuff from the farm, and I do a lot of cooking for the kids, so it's pretty basic too. Yeah. And then, my wife and I'll split something, but, I just make a dish off of whatever I'm feeding them. But, they eat pretty good.
Yeah,
I try to eat whole foods, with the kids. And it's always like a starch, a protein, and a vegetable.
Do you ever get, like they say, writer's block? Do you ever get chef's block when you're trying to come up with something new?
Not really. I don't get to go out. When I was... didn't have children, I went out to eat all the time. So you can always go out to eat and you get little ideas here, whether it's just like one idea of something you get from them can spawn off in so much stuff,
Right.
you know? I mean, like I'm not inventing the wheel, right? I mean, I'm a big believer in make a good sauce, cook everything properly. Things are going to work out, you know, get some cool stuff. We love making like risottos and adding to it like grits and stuff and like loading them up, whether you put crawfish or whatever you want to put in there.
That was the thing that jumped out at me the very first time I was in your restaurant. When I saw that addition of pepper jack cheese in the grits with the crusted flounder, I just went, I used to keep this quote taped up on my board in my restaurant in Los Angeles. And it said, it was a chef, I can't remember his name. He said, we like to play with the classics. And I thought, that's, in my opinion, that's as far as you need to go.
Right.
And you do it brilliantly. Could you have accomplished what you have without going to culinary school?
You know, by the time I went to culinary school, I'd already cooked for a while.
Yeah.
You know, and that just sort of like put me in the right direction of, all right, this is what you're going to do. I left Hawaii to go to culinary school, and I was already running a hotel over there, the Hilo Bay Hotel. And I mean, this was a place where we walked a shopping cart down to the fish market.
Yeah.
Where they actually brought the fish into the bay and they auctioned them off in Hawaiian.
Yeah.
And it was really cool because you could barely understand them, but they'd auction and we'd throw a couple fish in this basket, take it back. And so, and the farmers actually, it's different than here. You know, the farmers came to the door with their produce. So you'd walk out to the truck and buy their produce. And that was like every day.
Yeah.
And then when I lived in San Francisco, I worked at a place called Stars for Admiral Schwarzner, and it was Christopher Fernandez was head chef there. And we would take a basket down to the market twice a week.
Yeah.
And that's how we'd open up like garbage bags, you know, the paper sacks, and then write up our menu for the week or for the 3 days.
Right.
And so that was just kind of like the standard I kind of had, you know, coming into this, like, hey, kind of make it up as you go along. Like I do a lot of tasting dinners for charity, right? We give these things away. And I mean, I wait till an hour before they're there before I like finalize, hey, this is what we're going to do. And sometimes I'll change it as we go. You know?
I am so glad to hear you say that, because the only food work that I've done since I've been here is charity work.
Yeah.
And it drives me nuts sometimes that you offer your services, and I'm happy to do it. I'm so blessed. My wife and I are so blessed by the man above to get us here to the Grand Strand. So I'm happy to give back to anybody that needs help. But it drives me crazy that you'll get these special orders 24 hours before the 8-person tasting menu. So I'm glad to hear.
Yeah, they bring somebody that has all these food restrictions, and
it's
like,
I'll tell you something.
Why did you invite this person?
It's why I got out of the private chef world. I can't tell you. I mean, Tom Cruise, I worked 2 years, so I knew going in what his needs were.
Yeah.
And, you know, we were on the move all the time, and he wanted things yesterday, but I knew that going in.
Right.
So I was prepared for it. Then comes Mel Gibson, who was just the opposite. I mean, I could put anything on the plate, you know, for them. But after that, and before I opened my restaurant, I worked for every Hollywood knucklehead in the business, and they always said the same thing in my interview. We like everything until your first day. And then they say, oh, I forgot to tell you that the daughter's a vegetarian, our son is vegan, and my husband only eats chicken on every Thursday. You want to just pull your hair out, but don't get me started with that. What's the best pizza in the Grand Strand?
Ooh. I think Landolfi's has a good pizza.
I haven't been there yet.
I think Frank's has a pretty good pizza. What's the one up here that's more of a New York style?
Danny's?
Danny's is pretty good.
3 must-have cooking appliances / utensils that are a must for the home cook.
Good pair of tongs.
I knew you were going to say that. That's so great.
Of course, a good knife.
Yeah.
And either some sort of iron skillet or good saute pan. I'm a one pan guy.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, because I clean as I go, I cook as I go, and like literally, I love doing that for my wife and showing her. I'm like, because she gets done cooking. Sometimes there's a good bit of utensils that got used, and I'm like a one pan.
Yeah, like a storm came through. I get it.
So I think your listeners would really enjoy like sort of my philosophy on how to cook, and I think it could help them all make better food.
Yeah.
Food is a feeling, and I say this a lot. And when you're eating something, you feel everything.
Right.
There's a little bit of aroma. You eat with your eyes, and of course you cheers, and that's the sound that comes into it. But everything else is a feeling. Like when you lick a lemon, right? It makes you pucker up because you felt it.
Right.
When you pour a bunch of salt on your tongue, you're going to feel that. It's going to make you cringe, right? Because it's so much salt, because you actually feel it. Just like hot and cold. And a lot of times you'll taste something, and if something is bland, it's because you didn't feel anything.
Yeah.
And so you can always add a pinch of feeling to your food, right? And whether they notice it or not, it's better than the absence of it. So say you taste something is missing a little something, like a pinch of sugar or some honey or some agave or a little bit of, bitter in there.
Yeah.
Whatever you can add to it, whether they notice it or not, it's better than the abyss of nothing.
Of blandness.
Right.
Yeah.
And the blandness is the not feeling anything. So I always tell people, when you taste something, it's missing something. Americans, we love fat, right? We like the fat feeling because fat's a feeling.
Right.
We like salt. We like hot. We like crunchy. We like spicy.
Yeah.
We like sour. We like sweet, right? So you want to add all those dimensions of feelings to your food without any of them being like overbearing, and unless that's what you're going for.
Right.
And then, if you're ever missing something, just thinking a pinch of this or a pinch of that,
right.
They don't have to notice it, but it's better than having nothing there.
That is such great advice for the home cook, because and it's great coming from you, a successful chef that you are, because I think what happens a lot is that people that cook at home that want to take it to the next level, they're a bit intimidated. Correct me if I'm wrong. Some of what you're saying is take a chance. Take a chance to add. You think something's bland, take a chance. What's the worst that's going to happen?
That's right.
Yeah.
And like, I'm not a big recipe guy, right? We have a few recipes at the restaurant. We make all our breads and stuff like that. We have recipes for that, but that always changes too.
Yeah.
Because if you just follow the exact recipe every single time, how can you ever make it any better?
Yeah.
So I'm always taking chances. And listen, I screw up more stuff than I probably make right.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but it's another great thing for the home cook to understand, coming from a chef like Chef Adam Kirby. Sorry, go ahead. You screw up once in a while.
Yeah, I screw up all the time. I like to learn the hard way.
Yeah.
I do that in farming, everything in my life. I do the hard way, right? Yeah. I mean, it's the way I learn. I have to screw something up a few times before I can get it right.
I have certainly been on that end of screwing things up. That is such a great piece of advice. What is the one food or dish that you would be embarrassed to tell your other chef friends? And I'll give you an example so you know I'm not just setting you up here. I love hamburger helper lasagna.
Right.
So what's your dish like that you would eat that you'd be embarrassed to tell people?
Oh, I would be embarrassed to tell me. I love is Cheese Whiz.
Oh, thank you for that.
I hide it in the shopping cart. Because, I know everybody in the grocery store.
Of course, they're all watching.
They all want to come by.
Yeah.
So I literally hide it. It's for the kids.
I told this story on one of the first episodes that when I was a kid, I designed this little pan pizza where you take a piece of white bread, you spread Cheese Whiz on it, a little bit of tomato sauce, and fry it in a pan for a little while. All my friends in the neighborhood just loved coming by. What's next for Chef Adam Kirby?
Well, I work on this farm a lot, so that's a big endeavor I've gotten. It gets bigger and bigger and bigger. and more efficient. And, down here, I don't spray them with anything, and we don't, I'm fighting drought, which was a big one last year. So now I've brought water to the property. We had some issues with hurricanes. I lost all my bees last year. So I've started over. I'm back up to 18 hives.
Wow.
I've fenced in I've probably got 15 acres that, it's just me and a farmer. It's just us two. And we farm, my farm's 60 acres.
Wow.
And then we probably farm another 40 or 50 acres with butter beans, stuff like that, and some snap beans. So we've fenced in about 15 acres of that to help mitigate the deer, right?
Yeah.
Because, they'll eat you right. They'll eat 10 acres overnight if you don't watch them. And, but of course, we've always got some other stokes in the fire. We got a couple things on the horizon, but I'm not allowed to talk about
that. That's fine. Understandable. And it sounds like that farm keeps you completely busy. Well, Chef Adam Kirby, co-owner of Bistro 217 and Rustic Table, thank you so much for coming in, and thank you for bringing your charming mother, Nancy Kirby, in to sit with us. You don't need promo. You have 2 successful restaurants. I don't think there's anyone in the Grand Strand that doesn't know your restaurants and who you are, but not too many people know who I am. And I take this as a personal favor to me. If there's anything I can ever do in return, I so appreciate it. Thank you so much for coming in. And coming up next, we have got the content food critic, Sophia Edens, and she's going to be sitting in the driver's seat. She's going to handle the show from this point on. I'll see you on the other side.
And we're back with talking about food. Now, obviously, this is not the private chef to the stars. This is Sophia Edens, the content food critic. And somehow I talked Chef Richard into letting me host this show. He's very trusting and he's very wise. He knows a lot about food. And that's why I wanted to interview him today, because he's very fascinating. We want to get to know our host of the show, obviously. So fascinating. Welcome to Talking About Food, Chef Richard.
Oh, it's a joy to be here on this side, side of the table.
Yeah, this is definitely a new one.
I don't know if it's a joy, actually. I'm not crazy about talking about myself, but you claim that people like to hear it. So I'm doing what you tell me to do.
Yes, sir.
It's all yours.
So they call you the private chef to the stars. I was really fascinated in why they call you that. Why are you the private chef?
Do you want to know why I'm the private chef or the private chef to the stars? Or both?
Both.
Okay, I'll start with private chef. That I didn't even, there was a point in my life in Los Angeles where I didn't even know that the private chef world existed. I had no concept of it. I was going to culinary school. I was working for a number of different caterers. And this one time, the chefs and I, there was about 4 of us, we were coming home late at night from a party, a wedding or whatever it was that we did. And I overheard this one chef talking about how he was the private chef to this actress, Amy Irving. Now, for those who don't know, Amy Irving used to be married to Steven Spielberg. And the more he talked about it, the more it intrigued me. And I started picking his brain. I said, what do you mean private chef? Do you just work for her? And he said, I work exclusively for her 5 days a week. And then sometimes if she's doing a movie, I travel with her. And I thought, wow, because I had worked in restaurants before. And I think maybe even at that time I was at the Hotel Bel Air, and I was room service waiter, but I was fascinated with the chef station. And I used to go out there all the time and watch them. And they'd call me over when they were doing something cool because they knew I liked it. But it's also, as a lot of listeners know, very chaotic. And It wasn't something that I gravitated towards. But this whole private chef thing came about. And I asked the chef that I was talking to, I said, how do I get in? He said, call my friend. She owns an agency. It's an employment agency strictly for chefs in Los Angeles. So I did. and that's how I got into being a private chef.
That's incredible. Seriously,
No,
that's
very
a lot
lucky.
of hard work.
Yeah.
With that comes the title of being a private chef. What makes the difference between a private chef and a personal chef?
The main difference is and those terms get thrown around a lot, and it seems to me like sometimes, some of the younger chefs that are coming up the ranks that are doing catering, for small groups of people will then take on the label as a private chef. It's not a private chef. Private chef, like I said earlier, works exclusively for one person or family and often travel with them, often supply their private jets with food, for long trips if they're not going with them. And a personal chef typically works for a number of different families. So they'll work a couple days a week for this family and then for the next family. But that's pretty much the major difference.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
I didn't know those differences. That's really cool.
What's interesting, if I can just interrupt, what's really interesting about the private chef world still to this day, it's virtually unknown. Not too many people know.
Especially in the Grand Strand.
Yeah,
Definitely.
Exactly.
It's very up and coming.
I've said this before that when you're a restaurant chef and you're getting more and more popular, you end up on more and more magazine covers.
Yes.
The more popular you get as a private chef, the less people know about you. Because if you're climbing the ladder in the private chef world, you're starting to work for the biggest of the big, and they require the most amount of confidentiality. So
Absolutely.
The bigger you get, the less people know about you.
Hey, you seem to have a lot of perks with that, though. I mean, you've worked for Mel Gibson for 16 years.
13.
13.
Yeah, it's all right.
bad.
That's okay. It's all right.
I'm sorry.
No, you don't
Can
have
we
to
cut
be
that
sorry.
out?
No, it's fine. I don't expect everybody to know how long I worked for Mel Gibson. Well, I'll tell you what.
It was
No.
16.
I'll tell you what. After I stopped working for the family and he had his own place, he used to call me up to his house when he was doing dinner parties. And I'm sure that went on for at least 3 years. So that's 16 years. I saved you.
Oh, yeah, you did.
Yeah.
How did people find you in Hollywood working for some of Hollywood's greatest actors and actresses? Did you have an agency? Were you marketing yourself? How did people find you?
Well, I was very fortunate that after working 2 years for Tom Cruise, first of all, let me back up. There's a number of agencies in Los Angeles that handle the private chefs, butlers, limo drivers, that kind of thing. And there's a handful of known, real good ones.
Mm-hmm.
And after working for Tom Cruise, I literally could go into just about any one of those and they would stand up and take notice, not because I'm some super chef, but the fact that I worked for who I did has a lot of clout.
Mm-hmm.
So what would happen is they would send me out on jobs that were strictly people in the public eye. And the reason for that was in the private chef world, I've said this a number of times, it's only about 50% of your culinary talents that get you in the door. The other 50% is your character and can they trust
charisma.
you.
Yeah.
So if I'm coming from, working 2 years with Tom Cruise, the agencies and the people they sent me out to could pretty much guarantee they could trust me. So, and then, 13 years with Mel Gibson, or like you like to say, 16 years with Mel Gibson. Yeah, I could.
You're on call.
Yeah,
It counts.
yeah. I could pretty much write my own ticket,
Yeah.
But it really got to a point where, especially after Mel, I knew working for Mel Gibson I knew a month after I was there that was one of those primo jobs that all the private chefs talked about that they would love to have.
Mm-hmm.
Working for a family that allows them to cook whatever they want. There's almost no pressure. They treat you like family. They ask you to fly with them when they're traveling abroad. So I knew right away that was one of those great gifts that I had stumbled onto. And after that, and before I opened my restaurant, I worked for what I think is every knucklehead town that was just the opposite of working for Mel. But anyway, back to the agencies. After Mel, I was begging them to send me out on jobs of people not in the public eye. I wanted to work for like the president of a bank or something like that. And they just wouldn't have it because they knew they could sell me that way.
Because of that confidentiality and the trusting.
Yeah.
That's a really cool piece of history for sure. You briefly mentioned about traveling abroad as a private chef. How did you manage getting ingredients in other countries?
That was, depending on where we were, it could be very difficult. We were in, I can't give away people's names when I'm talking about this particular situation, but I was in Prague for a month, and we were on top of a mountain that overlooked Prague, and it was literally a half hour, 45-minute drive down into town. And so I couldn't be doing that every day.
Absolutely.
So I managed to grab one of the security people, and I was able to give them a list each day with, specifying every single thing that I needed and how I wanted it to look and that kind of thing. So that was kind of hard. But most times I would fly ahead.
Okay.
I would be ahead.
Wow.
Like when Mel was doing the Passion.
Yes.
I flew to Rome a week before. I set up the villa. I got to know all of the stores. And
were there any language barriers you came across? Any?
Yeah, sometimes. And that was
different ingredients.
That was long before we had translation on our phones.
Yes.
So I bought this $450 language translator. I just thought I was so cool. And I'd go into the stores and type it out, and they'd say, "Oh, okay, over here, and you get to know it. And they were, for the most part, it wasn't too difficult. Like I said, it depended on where you went.
That's really interesting.
Believe it or not, we were in Prague for a month, and then moved over to London for about 8 months. And sometimes it was harder shopping in London than it was in Prague because of how the markets were set up. The markets were bigger. They were more like we have here, Kroger, that kind of thing. But they're run differently. Like, I'll never forget the first time. I couldn't wait to get to London. There wasn't going to be a language barrier, right? I got there 3 days before the family showed up. So I had 2 full shopping carts in a grocery store, right? And I get up to the till there, and the people, they sit down when they check you out.
Oh, like Aldi.
Is that what they do there?
Aldi is a European store, I believe.
That's why. Yeah. So I said, and this is funny. I asked if they had eggplant because I couldn't find it. And the lady didn't know what I meant by eggplant. And then it dawned on me that I had worked for a family that had a butler who trained at Buckingham Palace. And he taught me, it's not an eggplant there, it's an aubergine.
An aubergine.
So I said to the lady, "Oh, I got it, aubergine." And she said, "Yeah, you back in that." So I had 2 carts filled with food that I put up on the till. I went running because I have a taxi cab waiting outside because we didn't have cars. We were driving on the opposite side of the road. So I got a taxi waiting outside. So I come running back to the line thinking that she's going to be finished by then. She hadn't even started.
Oh, so she was waiting for you
to get back. Waiting for me to get back with my aubergine before she started checking out.
Were you getting weird looks from everybody in line?
I think she was getting weird looks from me. Really? You couldn't start doing this from? So, yeah. So, yeah, things like that. They kind of have to get used to. I came up with this. I think it was a great idea that whenever we would arrive in a new town, I would seek out the markets that I knew I would be shopping at. I would introduce myself to the manager. I would tell them that I'm working for somebody in the public eye. We're going to be here for a while, and I'm going to be spending a lot of money in your store. And then I would hand them an envelope with money from my pocket, not the client's pocket. And I would say, thank you in advance for doing this. And I got special treatment because of that. Yeah.
Well, you're really proving the point as to the difference between being a private chef and a personal chef, because that is a lot of dedication and a lot of time for sure.
Yeah, and you kind of learn as you go.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, I know you're very particular about names and talking about who you worked for. However, I read somewhere that you actually got to cook for Lisa Marie Presley.
That is correct. Yeah.
Please tell me more. Please elaborate.
And that was after Tom Cruise, after Mel Gibson, after Leonardo DiCaprio. And when I was headed up her driveway in Los Angeles, my hands were shaking.
I bet. I can just
thought,
picture this.
Yeah, I didn't think I would be intimidated by anybody, but growing up an Elvis fan, it was just amazing. And it would be perfectly honest, it was a test dinner to see if the family wanted to hire me. And I never did. I never did go back.
But
so
you can say you cooked for Lisa Marie Presley at least once.
That was really bizarre.
Yeah.
In a good way, I guess. I was just trying my heart. You work around celebrities enough, you start to realize, first of all, they're pretty much like us, but they also can pick up on the star attraction, kind of, deer in the headlights they're looking for and kind of thing. And if you just sort of take a deep breath and talk to them like we're talking to each other, that kind of goes away. It was a little difficult with her.
Do you remember what you made?
Not exactly. I do remember that the parents requested food from a diet that a diet that I was not familiar with. And you work in Hollywood, you learn about all these diets. They come and they go. I always say that you know what? I'm not going to go there. It was a diet I wasn't familiar with. So I ran out and I got a couple of books, and I was told that I could do for the children just about anything. Mm-hmm. So I worked my butt off on this diet food on one side, and then I'm putting the food together for the other side. And it turns out that the parents ended up eating all the kids' food as well. So
it happens.
I don't remember exactly what it was, though.
You mentioned talking about picking up books in order to learn. I've been thrifting a lot lately for books and a lot of older cookbooks way back in the 1960s and the 50s. And I'm trying to learn more about the history and why we cooked so simplistically. I read these books and I see how simple the ingredients were.
Yeah, a lot of Jell-O.
Lots of Jell-O.
And a lot of cream cheese and canned soup.
But I think there was an abundance of natural ingredients. And I think that's why I like shopping at the farmers markets around here, is because I'm finally sourcing these ingredients and I'm able to make what I'm able to find. And they're actually pretty cost effective. I feel like I pick up a modern cookbook and first of all, they're not being recipe tested. So you have all these influencers on YouTube and TikTok that are putting out cookbooks, but I'm finding there's complications because they're not testing the recipes anymore. They're just putting this content out just to say they have a cookbook so people will purchase it. Yeah. And I think that's why I'm trying to thrift as many cookbooks as I possibly can find. Yes.
Yeah, it's a good idea. There's a couple classic ones that you should pick up. There's some great French sauce cookbooks.
The mother sauces.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, that's a classic to have.
I just found, being the content food critic, I read a lot about New York Times food critics, and I recently found an original, I think 1960s or 1957, the New York Times first cookbook from Craig Claiborne.
Yeah, I remember him. Yeah.
Very wonderful piece. Yeah. And he even features the mother sauces, but he has a lot of lamb dishes. Just great experimentation. Yeah. And I look up to him a lot. It's why I visit places multiple times.
Yeah, and it's
also set that standard.
It's also from the generation of chefs on TV that stuck to the classics. Yes. Unlike today, it's very, very difficult to find today. Not that the food shows don't serve a great purpose, but the family has changed.
I agree.
So has the food.
The one TV chef that I always looked up to when I was a child was Emeril Lagasse.
Yeah, when you were a child.
When I was a child.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, my Nana and I would sit down and watch his show all the time.
Yeah, he's one of the few chefs from that time period that I felt, now here's a guy who loves to eat.
Yes.
You know?
Yes, and enjoys cooking and enjoys making people smile. That's everything I want is making people happy. Sometimes I'll cook a meal and there's times where I don't even eat. It's just I want to make other people happy.
Yeah.
I just cook from the heart and I'm just happy to do so.
That's how I got into this career. That's what I love doing.
Absolutely. You always say the difference between you, the private chef, and someone like me, the home cook, is that you got a paycheck.
That's correct.
I deal with a lot of failures in the kitchen. I'm navigating these older recipes where the ovens were calibrated differently, and I'm having to kind of figure out the ways in which to put these recipes together. But I'm oftentimes seeing a little bit of failure.
Mm-hmm.
You cooked for some of the most amazing Hollywood elites. Did you have any failures?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. What I learned very quickly, first of all, private chefs don't have some of the advantages that restaurant chefs have. I'm not saying one is better than the other. That's not what I respect the restaurant world. Heck, I had Adam Kirby on before you took over the show, and he's just, phenomenal.
Amazing
and
local chef.
I don't believe that I could do what he does, but I don't necessarily know that restaurant chefs can do what I did. And what I learned along the way is, number one, it's all me. I have got nobody to blame any mistakes on but me. I'm the saucier. I'm the grill cook. I'm everything. I'm the pastry chef.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the things that I learned is that I would, if I was trying something new, I always had a backup that I knew that they liked. Now, not everybody has that, that kind of an advantage, but when I could, I had a backup that I knew that they liked. So if I put out a new dinner and I was getting, I wasn't getting that warm fuzzy feeling, I could tell wasn't going over well, and maybe the lady at the house said, you know what, we're not crazy. That's okay. I've got this lemon garlic chicken ready to come out.
Wow.
Yeah. And then like with working for Mel as long as I did, I would put out sometimes 2 entrees, one that I knew worked and one that I was testing out. I was lucky that most of the time they liked the new one just as much, so I could add that to my repertoire.
Rotating
because
menu.
Another thing that a lot of people don't understand is, and this is why I always say that you, the home cook, and me, the private chef, are very much the same, is that I'm cooking pretty much 2 meals a day, lunch and dinner, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's 10 meals a week. That's 40 meals a month.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're hired to come in with the expertise that you're supposed to have, you're not copying anything in the first 6 months.
Mm-hmm.
So you better have a good repertoire ready to be able to pull that off. So that's how I started adding some other things. And then it got to the point where I could just pretty much wing it.
I've had a lot of recent mistakes. I'm not a professional chef by any means. I've had a lot of mistakes in the kitchen as I'm learning. And you never really answered my question. What specific moments have you had where you're really having these hard failures?
Well, one of them I talked about on an early episode before Mel Gibson came on, and it was at his house. There was going to be a dinner party, and I threw a whole bunch of filet mignon on the barbecue outside, and then he came into the kitchen and he starts telling me jokes. And nobody tells a joke like Mel. And I am in hysterics. And all of a sudden I look up and the barbecue outside is on fire. And I go out there and all of the steaks are charred and he's laughing at me, saying, wow, you got your hands full there now. And then he walks out, and I did some quick things to take care of it. But that was one. I'll tell you, the area of the food industry where I remember the most near disasters is the catering business. And I had my own catering company with a partner, and this one time we were on our way to the wedding reception that we've been hired to cook for, and we actually had the wedding cake with us.
Oh, wow.
And I had to slam on the brakes at one point.
Oh, no.
We pulled over and we got out and we opened the back doors, and the second and third layer had shifted over about 3 inches.
Whoa.
And in catering, certainly in Los Angeles, we used to say, you can fix anything. Which, by the way, I've talked about this before. Being a caterer and working for caterers as long as I did so helped me in the private chef world, because like you were asking me before, what is it like to cook on location?
Mm-hmm.
And very often you're cooking on location, when you're doing caters. But anyway, we got to the site and I'm looking at it and I'm going, man, how am I gonna fix this? And we ended up whipping up a whole bunch of cream and filling in where the cake had slid. But another time, and before I actually had a kitchen and I was catering right out of my house, we were doing a traditional Thanksgiving type dinner. Not on Thanksgiving.
Mm-hmm.
This is just what the people wanted. And I had ordered 8 turkeys. And I was to pick them up the day before or the night before. And I went to pick them up from the butcher shop and they were frozen solid.
Oh, no.
And I got them back home, these 8 or 9 turkeys, and I had no idea what to do. So I filled up the bathtub with with cool water. And I had 8 or 9 turkeys bobbing around in my bathtub all night long. But it worked. It worked.
Wow.
Yeah.
I guess I'll remember that.
Yeah. I hope you don't have to do that. Yeah.
Well, with Easter right around this weekend, let's hope I don't have to thaw out a turkey in my bathtub.
Yeah, right.
Well, thank you, Chef Richard, for letting me host. This was a blast. Seriously.
Not as much fun as I'm having. I don't have to think about it. It's like being a private chef. I don't have to think about what's for dinner. I can just answer your questions. No, it's great to have you here.
Yeah. I think I like being a guest more, but this was amazing. It's nice getting to know you a little bit better.
Great.
Well, that is all, folks. Thank you so much for joining with us on Talking About Food. And remember, you are your family's private chef.